With only 7 days left until the Game Week 1 deadline, that means there's only 7 days left to claim a 25% discount at Fantasy Football Hub for any FPL TV viewer. By becoming a member, you'll gain access to one of the fastest growing FPL communities with a range of excellent fantasy tools, including extensive Opta stats, player comparisons, fixture tickers, double game week spreadsheets, and team reveals from some of the world's best FPL managers every game week. To claim this discount, simply click the link in the description box below or use the discount code FPLTV25 when signing up before the Game Week 1 deadline. Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fixture Watch, the series that uses the official FDR ratings released by FPL to determine which teams look to have a good or bad run of fixtures over the next 5 game weeks. As this is the first instalment of the Fixture Watch for the new season, we'll be looking at which teams have been given a favourable start to their Premier League campaign, to perhaps help us with our opening team selection dilemmas. So let's see how the FDR table looks for the opening game weeks. At the top of the FDR table to begin this season, with a difficulty rating of 13, is Liverpool. Liverpool have been gifted a fairly kind start, with their season opener against newly promoted Norwich, a game you'd expect to have plenty of chances, just like it did in the same opener 2 years ago. The fixture that follows at home to Burnley also looks appealing, as does their home fixture against Palace in Game Week 5. Chelsea and Leeds in between these can certainly prove tricky, but it's also worth noting that beyond these 5 game weeks, the Reds also face Brentford in Game Week 6, and then Watford in Game Week 8. Therefore, Liverpool face all 3 promoted clubs in just the opening 8 game weeks. After 2 very solid seasons defensively in previous years, Liverpool had a fairly poor season defensively last year, at least for their standards. Their 42 goals conceded did rank them as 4th best, which is fairly respectable, but the problem was they often showed a bit of complacency and let in at least 1 goal past them, therefore only resulting in an underwhelming 12 clean sheets, and this was without doubt down to their key centre-back Van Dijk suffering a season-ending injury. Despite the underwhelming defensive stats, both attacking defenders Trent and Robertson have retained their price from last season, and as always provide unparalleled attacking threat from defence. Doubling up on these two is always a tempter in FPL, as we also have that luxury of never worrying about rotation with them. The question is though whether doubling up on the expensive pair will still be worth it, even if Van Dijk isn't fit enough to start the season alongside them. As for their attack, well, it's certainly offering up some differentials, with both Jota and Mane extremely low in ownership, and that's understandably due to Mo Salah being as popular as ever, currently the most owned player in the FPL game. With this season opener against Norwich, it's looking almost inevitable that the Egyptian King will be the most selected captain for Game Week 1. Therefore, as much as you have to play your own game in FPL, it's undeniable that going without Salah could be deemed a very risky move. As we look back to the FDR table, it's the other side of Merseyside that also find themselves towards the top, with Everton too being gifted a very favourable opening set of fixtures. The Toffees face Southampton, Leeds, Brighton, Burnley and Villa in the opening 5, no doubt a fairly nice run, especially considering that in addition they also have a home fixture against Norwich in Game Week 6. In fact, the most appealing thing with regards to Everton is the longevity of this kind fixture run, where in the opening 10 game weeks Everton only face 1 of last year's top 4, and that's Man United in Game Week 7. It's difficult to know what impact Benitez can have on the Toffees to start this season, with the Spaniard, let's say, not the most popular of appointments amongst the Everton faithful. But in his system, he has been known to encourage his fullbacks to bomb forward, and hopefully that can only further benefit Luca Digne, who we already know has been a superb attacking outlet for them. Benitez has also favoured a 4-2-3-1 formation in the past, and the likes of Doucouré and Allan could be a perfect fit in that system, hopefully providing some good support to keep those clean sheets intact. Everton aren't a side I generally trust defensively, but if Rafa can get them organised, there's no doubting that the fixtures are there to keep a few clean sheets in the opening weeks, and for that reason, Pickford at 5 million may not be a bad opening option in goals either. As for up front, well, it's Calvert-Lewin who's the obvious and popular choice here, currently boasting a high ownership of nearly 30%. However, at 0.5 million cheaper, it'll be interesting to see if Benitez can get the best out of Richarlison, who is currently the big differential in this side at just 6%. Just 7 goals in the league last season is pretty poor for the Brazilian, but he's certainly one for the watch list now under new management given his talent and this kind run of opening fixtures. Next up for the teams towards the top of the FDR table is newly promoted Championship playoff winners Brentford, who also boast an FDR rating of 13 to kick things off. The Bees face a home fixture against Arsenal in Game Week 1, an unpredictable fixture, but it should be an exhilarating one, being played on the Friday night as our curtain raiser for the Premier League this season. Following that, they face Palace, Villa, Brighton and Wolves, therefore notably avoiding the likes of Liverpool, Man City, United and Chelsea in the opening weeks. Brentford were the Championship top scorers last year, scoring 79 goals, and a large percentage of these were scored by their star striker Ivan Toney, netting an impressive 31, the league's top scorer. In addition to this, he also notched 10 assists as well, therefore ending the season with a more than 50% goal involvement, a really impressive feat. For this reason, understandably, he's already been snapped up by over 30% of FPL managers, making him currently the most popular forward in the game, and given this decent run of opening 5 fixtures, he could really be a snip at 6.5 million. Despite Toney having this high ownership of 30%, it's interesting that Brentford's next highest owned player is just 1.9%, so there really is little interest in the rest of their squad. However, if you are in the market for a real budget-friendly player, then perhaps their winger Mbeumo could be worthy of consideration. At the tender age of just 21, the talented winger has already scored 50 career goals, so clearly he knows where the goal is. His 8 goals in the Championship last season was a tad underwhelming, but he did provide 10 assists, and also managed 15 goals in the previous season. At 5.5 million, considering Brentford's kind run of opening fixtures, he could end up being a very handy budget enabler, and at the very least should certainly be one for the radar. Another side towards the top of the FDR table is Aston Villa, and it's their opening 3 fixtures that look particularly appealing. The Villains open the season with what looks to be 3 very favourable games, facing 2 promoted sides Watford and Brentford, either side of a home fixture against Newcastle. It is worth noting though that unlike Everton, who I mentioned have good fixtures for the long term, if you are a fixture person, then Villa options would certainly come under the category of short term, as things get much harder for them from Game Week 4 onwards, where they face Chelsea, Everton, United and then Tottenham in consecutive game weeks. When considering their opening 3 fixtures, a few weeks back the likes of Grealish and Watkins were looking almost no-brainers for our starting squads. But now, with Grealish having gone to Man City, and with the surprise signing of Danny Ings as well, it really throws up a lot of question marks about their options. Will the signing of Danny Ings push Watkins out wide? Will Ings himself become the better forward option? And will the departure of Grealish increase or decrease the appeal of Emiliano Buendia at 1.5 million less? Clearly, there's a lot of question marks here, but whatever the conclusion, there's no doubting that Villa offer a whole range of FPL options to begin this season, who were a real surprise package last time out. Not just in attack either, with Martinez being the highest scoring goalkeeper last season, and Matt Targett looking a very handy 5 million option as well, a defence that kept the 3rd most clean sheets last year. With a difficulty rating of 14, it's Manchester United who also find themselves towards the top of the FDR table, and their opening 4 fixtures do look pretty good on paper. Because of this kind opening set of fixtures, just like Liverpool with Mo Salah, it sees Bruno Fernandes understandably as an extremely popular go-to premium option to begin this season. The Portuguese talisman ended last year as the top scorer in FPL on 244 points, and is currently the game's 3rd highest owned player at 41%. United are another side with an array of tempting FPL options to start the season with, and the addition of Jadon Sancho at 9.5 million is certainly an interesting one. At a fairly sizable 2.5 million less than Fernandes, it's certainly tempting to gamble on the winger keeping up with Bruno points-wise, and then utilising that extra money to gain an advantage elsewhere. With Anthony Martial out of form and Marcus Rashford out injured as well, it also makes Cavani up front a potentially reliable option for the opening game weeks. At the ripe age of 34, the concern with Cavani would be his guarantee on minutes, but during the early part of the season, the luxury is there's no busy schedule to worry about, and therefore perhaps his minutes can be more secure. United face Southampton, Wolves and Newcastle in the opening 4 game weeks, 3 teams that all scored fairly lowly last season, therefore also bringing United's defence into our consideration. Amongst defenders, Luke Shaw made the 2nd highest amount of key passes last season with 72, so hopefully there's a chance he can return points at both ends of the pitch. As we look back to the FDR table, there are of course other sides in the top half that are certainly worthy of talking about, but unfortunately I'm running out of time in this episode. Right amongst the top of the FDR table is Watford, and with no less than an incredible 10 forwards registered for them in FPL this season, that does seem a bit of a minefield. However, in midfield, their key man Ismail Assar could be a good starting option at 6 million. It's also worth noting that in the Championship last season, Watford did boast the best defensive record, keeping the most clean sheets, with an impressive 23 in 46 games, a 50% ratio. Elsewhere, we've also got West Ham, who performed brilliantly last season, finishing just 2 points off the top 4, and they too have some really appealing opening fixtures, facing Newcastle, Palace and Southampton in the opening 4 game weeks. Their fixture against Leicester in Game Week 2 should prove more of a test, but it does seem the Foxes may go into that fixture missing both Fofana and Johnny Evans at the back. At West Ham, with Antonio being the only registered forward in FPL currently, providing he stays fit, he can always be a very solid option. And as for their defenders, I really like Soufal at 5 million, who was superb last season as he was in the Euros as well. Another West Ham player that I'm strongly considering for my Game Week 1 squad is £6 million midfield differential Said Benrahma, who's looked full of confidence in pre-season friendlies and could be due a really big season. Before finishing up this episode, let's now quickly look towards the bottom of the FDR table and see which teams kick off their campaigns with a much more difficult run of fixtures. Rock bottom of the FDR table is Norwich City, just like they were at the start of the season 2 years back. The Canaries face an extremely challenging opening, facing Liverpool and Man City in just the first 2 games, then followed by Leicester and Arsenal. It's without doubt a nightmare start, but let us not forget how good Norwich were at the beginning of the season 2 years back. 2 years ago, they faced the likes of Chelsea, Liverpool and Man City in the opening 5 game weeks, and Pukki and Cantwell still managed to emerge as options, so anything can happen. Elsewhere at the bottom of the FDR table, we also have Southampton, who face Everton, Man United, West Ham and City in the opening 5 games, and joining them with a difficulty rating of 17 is Crystal Palace, facing Chelsea, West Ham, Spurs and Liverpool. As for the big sides, it's the European champions Chelsea that find themselves with a potentially tricky start, facing Arsenal, Liverpool and Tottenham in just the opening 5 game weeks, notably all of those away from home. So that wraps up the first episode of the Fixture Watch for the new season. Hopefully you found it useful and informative, or at the very least entertaining. And if you did, then please be sure to support the channel by leaving a like and most importantly getting subscribed. As always, you can also hit that notification bell so you always know when a new video goes live. I'll be back with another video in a few days, so until then, FPL responsibly.